Hi, hello, you know the drill. Let's pair some Pat McGrath palettes. I'm going to take my Urban Decay primer potion to start off the look. And we can talk about the most exciting new release, the MIDI version of the Natasha Denona Gold palette. I spoke already about it briefly on my Instagram, so we've already exchanged thoughts there. But Natasha has finally released a monochromatic version of her gold palette in the MIDI format. For those of you who have been around makeup for a while, you will know that quite a while ago, at this point I want to say at least 5 or 6 years ago, Natasha released, and she used to release these like bigger palettes that used to cost 140 euros or something of the sort. For foundation today I'm going to take the MAC Studio Water Weight foundation in the shade NC25. And when the gold palette was released, I want to say it was an absolute banger. People loved that palette. I think to date people really love that palette. I would argue that actually to date the gold palette is Natasha's best eyeshadow palette ever, and Natasha has released a lot of palettes. I think it will come down to probably Yucca and gold. If I had Yucca, I would probably think Yucca is a pretty solid palette as well, but I never bought it, so I can't really speak about that. But I do think that out of the palettes that I have seen so far, and out of the ones that I own, as much as I love my other palettes from Natasha, I love my bronze palette, I love my face and eye palettes, I enjoy my glam, and I did a nude, I still think Natasha's gold palette, the original gold palette, is her best work. Now, Natasha's original gold palette, for the most part, has been discontinued and gone already for several years. I know that it's made a couple of comebacks on her website, and you can probably find it secondhand from someone, but officially it's been discontinued and it's been gone already for quite a few years. So I do understand the appeal from her side to make an updated version of that palette and sell it in the MIDI format, because I do think her MIDI format is probably her most popular format of eyeshadow palette so far. It has a lot of eyeshadows, it is somewhat smaller, it is a lot less expensive compared to those first palettes, which were in the range of like 140 euros. The MIDI palettes now range somewhere in between 65 and 70. I want to say when she launched them they were around 65. Now they're more towards the 70. For concealer I'm going to take my tried and true Skin Correct from Dior in the shade 1N. And so first, to get this out of the way, in case you haven't already heard about it, I actually posted on my Instagram stories, and I mentioned it also in my post on Instagram, where, because yesterday I did a look with the gold palette because I was inspired to pull mine out. And then I want to say that several people have already probably even posted videos on YouTube to make sure that you're informed that the new MIDI golden palette contains quite a number of repeats from the original gold palette, because I want to say at least 9 of the shades, like several mattes and several of the shimmers, are repeats, and there is apparently a repeat, like one of the mattes I want to say is a repeat from the Star palette. I didn't catch that because I don't have the Star palette, but my friend Claudia, B.O.B. Mindset here on YouTube, whom you have heard me talk about so much, she's one of my besties here on YouTube, I love her. She mentioned that one of the mattes is actually also a repeat from that Star palette. So in fact, if you own the original gold palette, you're really only getting like 4 new shades with the MIDI golden. To set the foundation, I'm going to take the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Finish Powder. So you can see this 2 ways. First of all, because the original gold palette is already quite old, majorly discontinued, hard to find, a lot of people who have come into makeup in the past couple of years may not even have heard about it. It's great for them that she's releasing a monochromatic gold palette, because I kind of saw it coming. I already thought that at some point in time she's going to do some sort of a re-release of the gold palette in a MIDI format. I was just curious how she's going to play it. And what she's decided to do is also, you know, rather smart. In the end of the day, she's re-promoting shades that were in the original gold palette, because the original gold palette had a really good variety of different tones of gold, and why would she go and reinvent the wheel when she already has the shades, the winning formulas? Why would she go out of her way to reinvent the wheel and make new gold shades that are somewhat different, like itty bitty different than what was in the original gold palette? Just take the original, take what worked about it and put it in a new palette. Perfect. I'm going to take the Too Faced Laminating Brow Wax to quickly do my brows. So I totally understand where she's coming from. I completely understand why she's doing this palette. I think it's really clever of her to do this palette. I think it's going to sell really well because her midi monochromatic palettes have been incredibly successful in the past. But, and again, we've come to a point that I have discussed previously, and we're circling back to why I think the gold palette is her favorite palette to date. While I love her monochromatic palettes, since, you know, I have bronze, I have glam, I have I Need a Nude, apparently I have a thing, the face palettes, apparently I have a thing for her monochromatic palettes. I do think that when she made gold, she was like obsessed by genius or something, because that palette is so good because it is not just gold. If you look at the shades that are present in there, yes, you have a good variety of like mattes, you have a good variety of different like finishes and undertones of gold, but also you have shades like lime chrome and brass. Lime chrome is, imagine Pat McGrath VR Fire Opal, but then not in a baked formula, and brass is this beautiful flaky duochromy like gold greenish teal shade. And there are a couple of teals in the gold palette as well. I'm not really going to bronze today, I'm just going to sort of like contour slash bronze with the contour stylus from Victoria Beckham Beauty in the shade Sandstone. And I really liked, you know, that play on a color, like still a monochromatic palette, but with a little bit of a twist to it, something to make the palette a little bit more versatile. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you really look at it and your perspective, what you want from these palettes, after that she started to play these monochromatic stories really safe and sort of stay within the same color family. And I love my bronze palette, but my bronze palette could probably be condensed from 15 to something in the range of 6 to 8 eyeshadows, because in the end of the day, even though there are different undertones of bronzy shades there are some really beautiful shades in the bronze palette. I love my bronze palette, but a lot of the times, if you do a look with the bronze palette, you will only see minor differences between the looks that you have done with it. And I feel like that's been a recurring problem with her monochromatic palettes, also with I Need a Nude, for example, that a lot of the looks tend to be very similar to each other, just because when you take a certain color, there's only really so much you can do with it. But again, I think for some people that's probably really the whole draw of these palettes, that they are so incredibly easy to use, they're so brainless. Whatever eyeshadow you put on your eyes, you're always going to come up with a gorgeous look. So I think that that's something that I personally don't, not appreciate, but I'm personally a little bit disappointed that she has taken also this new midi golden palette in such a safe direction, because to me personally what's happening now is that she has taken the gold palette and removed the most fun shades from it and made it a little bit more boring and safe. Alright, for blush today I'm going to take this new cream blush that I have from Pat McGrath Labs in the shade, oh hello Mona, in the shade Divine Rose Glow. Also, just to give you a little heads up, the look that I'm going for today is going to be very similar to the look that I posted a couple of days ago, demoing the new Dior shades that I purchased and the cream blushes from Pat. So hopefully you don't mind. I'm basically going to go for a very similar vibe, because I figured it would maybe be nice for people who don't want to spend over 30 euros on a single eyeshadow from Dior, but do have an extensive Pat McGrath collection, to sort of dig into Pat McGrath's eyeshadows and see what is similar specifically to the shade Rose Tulle that I demoed in that video. I think Rose Tulle is a really special eyeshadow because of the beautiful neutrality of the undertone and like that beautiful rosiness but still like subdued, and I really love Rose Tulle. But I thought, what if you don't want to spend this much money on Rose Tulle, but you do want to have something similar in your collection and you maybe already have a lot of Pat McGrath Labs eyeshadows. So I have found an eyeshadow I think that is rather similar. By that I mean similar, not dupe at all. They are in a similar vein. And honestly, I want to wear the Matte Trance lipstick that I purchased as well, the shade Nude Nocturne again. And one of you asked me to compare it to Flash 3, so I actually think I'm going to pull out both Flash 5 and Flash 3 because I have both, and we're going to do some comparison swatches. Let's switch it up a little bit for highlighter. I'm actually going to take this liquid highlighter that I have from Daniel Sandler that came in a set with another highlighter and 2 blushes, but it is a beautiful sort of like a light champagne shade. If you enjoy like liquid formula for blushes and highlighters, I extremely highly recommend Daniel Sandler's products because they are absolutely gorgeous on the skin. I'm very curious what your thoughts are on the golden palette. Are you the midi golden palette? Are you gonna pick it up? Obviously, if some of you, like I said, have come into makeup a bit later, you don't know about the original gold palette, you don't have it, there's no way for you to get it, or you're just not into the shadows that are not gold in it, because of course it is completely possible that you're not into the duochrome shades, you do not appreciate the blues. But I'm also curious what you think about Natasha's monochromatic palettes. Do you think that she's been playing it a little bit too safe lately? Although I have to say Yuka had a good variety in it. Then she had that palette that I forget the name of, where she mixed the pinks and the greens, which was also really fun. But a lot of her other monochromatic palettes I think have remained quite safe. Like I Need a Nude would have been the perfect color story to mix in a little bit of green eyeshadow, and it's a pity that she doesn't really do that anymore. Like 2 or 3 eyeshadows within the 15 format that are just a different tone, but a tone that is complementary to whatever like underlying theme there is in the palette would have been so nice. Now before we get into the eye look, I do want to mention which eyeshadow I was referring to earlier that I think might be similar to Rose Tulle, and by similar I mean sort of in the same family but like distant cousins. So this is Rose Tulle from Dior, and the eyeshadow that I had in mind from Pat McGrath Labs is this one here from the Celestial Nirvana palette. To me this is like a similarly deeper rosy neutral pink eyeshadow. I just wanted to show you something, you know, that is, I feel like in a similar vibe but not exactly the same eyeshadow, just in case you did not want to spend the money on Rose Tulle. So as you can see, Rose Tulle is a lot more neutral in tone, like I said, somewhat deeper in tone, whereas the shade from Pat is much punchier, much brighter, but I feel like they have that similar neutral rosiness to them. So if you're looking for something to somewhat satisfy your Rose Tulle needs, then just go for the shade from Pat McGrath Labs, because that one is also gorgeous. This is probably my favorite pink eyeshadow from Pat McGrath Labs, precisely because it has that like neutrality. Alright, you are a little bit zoomed in and we can get started on the eye look. Now it's not going to come as a surprise that since the other eyeshadow palette we're using is Interstellar Icon, which only has 4 eyeshadows, most of the eyeshadows I'm going to use today are going to come from Celestial Nirvana, which works out really well because I haven't actually used Celestial Nirvana in a while. I'm going to start off with this beautiful like sort of like neutral brownie shade, which I'm going to fluff through my crease. I know a lot of you were inspired to go and check out Rose Tulle from Dior after my last video, and you know, if you think that was the perfect rosy nude eyeshadow for you and you have been dreaming of having an eyeshadow like this in a beautiful formula for a very long time, then by all means go and check out Rose Tulle. Rose Tulle is a very unique eyeshadow, and I can only highly recommend it if you like these sort of tones. But if you know, got inspired and you got that like little, you know, when we see someone use something that we have not seen before and we get that little like jitter in our stomach, like, oh, maybe I should go and buy this, but it's completely on a whim and it's not something that you're going to enjoy in the long run, but you do want to scratch the itch, then just pull out your Pat McGrath palettes and try to go for something similar. I think Eleganza from the Divine Rose 2 palette may be somewhat similar as well as the metallic shade from the Bridgerton 1 palette. I think they're a little bit more purple than they are like rosy neutral compared to Rose Tulle, but like I said, if that will scratch the itch for you and you don't have to go and buy Rose Tulle, then by all means do that. Celestial Nirvana is such an interesting palette to me. There are eyeshadows in here that I basically never touch. Case on point, this hot pink here, literally not once. I think I've swatched it, but I've never actually used it in a look. Oh no, maybe I've mixed it in together with the metallic champagne to create like a light pink champagne shade, but I've never actually used it on its own, and I do not foresee the day that that will actually happen. But there are other eyeshadows in this palette, such as the pink that we're going to use today, as well as the neutrals. So this corner here of the 4 neutrals, I love those. The green is gorgeous as well. There are eyeshadows in here that I certainly enjoy, but there are also eyeshadows that I literally never touch. So Celestial Nirvana is such a walking contradiction for me. Alright, I should have probably just told you what I'm going to do next. I'm going to take the deeper brown now to do my usual fake winged liner in my lashes. So do a lot of you guys have the original gold palette? What do you think about it? Is it one of your favorites from Natasha or not so much? Which Natasha Denona palette is your favorite? If you had to pick one, if someone came to your house and was like, okay, you can only keep one Natasha Denona palette, I know, really mean, but if they did, which one would you keep? I think for me it would be a toss between gold and the Face and Eye Light Glam palette, because I adore that palette. I'm actually already going to apply the lower lash line, and I'm just mixing the 2 mattes that I applied in my crease and as a liner here. Okay, taking the NYX glitter glue to apply on my moving lid before I apply the metallic shades, just so they stick around a little bit better. And then I'm going back into the Celestial Nirvana palette, and I'm going to take the gorgeous pink shade, and I'm going to apply that towards the like outer portion of the moving lid, and I'm going to save the inner third for a different eyeshadow. I really like this pink from Pat. It's such a pretty pink. It has a beautiful shine to it, a gorgeous tone, a bit deeper in tone. There's no baby pink in here, it's just a neutral rosy shade. I said neutral rosy about 100 million times in this video. Sorry. Next I'm going to go into Interstellar Icon and take one of my absolute favorite shades from Pat McGrath, which is this one here, the shade Golden Polaris. I think the two are going to make a beautiful combo together. And I'm actually going to take Golden Polaris just a little bit over top of that pink shade. And then I'm going to apply the rest here towards the inner corner of the eye. Interesting, I expected there to be more contrast between the 2 shades, but apparently they are somewhat similar in the depth of the tone, so there's not a lot of contrast going on here. Whoopsie. Still, a nice neutral look. So, look is done. Like I said, I'm wearing Nude Nocturne again, which was part of the Valentine's Day collection for 2024. This beautiful terracotta rose neutral shade. But I want to compare this lipstick to my 2 Flash lipsticks, because one of you asked me to compare to Flash 3, and I figured since I have Flash 3 and Flash 5, we can compare to both. So this here is Flash 5, and so here is Flash 5. And sorry, Flash 3, and let's also swatch Flash 5. I think Flash 5 is somewhat similar, but maybe a bit warmer in tone compared to Nude Nocturne. So let's recap. Nude Nocturne, Flash 3, Flash 5. I think Flash 3, and just from like experience wearing it, I think Flash 3 is a lot deeper in tone. It's like much more on the vampy side of things, and there's more purple in here. And Flash 5 clearly is, I think, within the terracotta family of shades, but there's more of like that underlying sienna, reddish, warmish undertone to it. And this is just such an interesting undertone of brown. I really like it. Alright, I'm going to wrap this video up. Hopefully the lipstick comparisons were useful to you. Hopefully you got something out of this eye look. Yes, it's not the same as Rose Teal, but you know, it's sort of like in the same vicinity. So if you wanted to scratch the itch, you can just pull out your Celestial Nirvana palette. Do let me know what you thought about the look. Do let me know your thoughts on the new Midi Golden palette from Natasha Denona. As usual, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!